Hello and welcome to Original Soundchat, where video game music is a work of art. On each episode, it's our goal to help you learn about two soundtracks from the world of games, as well as the people, stories, and critical tracks behind them. My name is DeVader.
And I'm Peter Spezia. We're brought to you by Anonymous Dinosaur and Rhymes with Asia. It's time to appreciate great OSTs and the games that they come from, without getting too bogged down in music theory. Joe, what are this week's games?
Up first is 2020's No Straight Roads, a music-based action title with a killer soundtrack based in a city that is powered by music, but monopolized by EDM.
Following that is the demonically stylish, combo-based hack-and-slash game that would establish a genre known as character action. 2001's Devil May Cry. Yeah, they're action games that both do something pretty unique within the genre for No Straight Roads. That would be involving music and rhythm-based gameplay. And yeah, DMC, I mean, the original Devil May Cry, that's the definition of character action, baby. That's all it is.
Yeah, it made a genre on its own.
Pretty impressive for sure. Joe, before we get into talking about what we're doing this week, we figure it's our first time recording in the new year. So happy 2022 so far, even though we're in the double digits of days into the year already. So we figure it's time to talk about quickly our top 10 favorite games of the year and what are our gaming resolutions for 2022?
Well, my top 10, starting from number 10, is New Pokemon Snap, Ender Lilies Quietest of the Nights, Resident Evil Village, Death's Door, Chicory A Colorful Tale, Metroid Dread, The Great Ace Attorney Chronicles, Eastward, Neo The World Ends With You, and of course, as you've heard multiple times, my game of the year is Imposter Factory.
My top 10 games of 2021. Let's see. Number 10, Mario Party Superstars. Number 9, The Artful Escape. Number 8, Bowser's Fury. Number 7, New Pokemon Snap. Number 6, Halo Infinite. Number 5, Hitman 3. Number 4, Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy. Number 3, Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart. Number 2, The Great Ace Attorney Chronicles. And number 1, Metroid Dread. How about those resolutions?
So this year, I'm hoping these are the 8 games that I would like to play. Realistically, I'll play 3 to 4 of them. I would like to play Omori. Also, Ori and the Blind Forest makes a return from last year's resolutions. Oops. Hyper Light Drifter, 13 Sentinels Aegis Rim, Ghost of Tsushima. Maybe I'll finally get there. A game called Haunting Ground, which I'm sure me and 3 other people have heard of. Final Fantasy VIII also makes a return from last year, and I would like to play Alan Wake this year.
Interesting. Maybe the remastered version is calling your name for Alan Wake there. I'm just going to pick the same resolutions as last year because I didn't do really any of them. Well, with one exception. So, Cyberpunk 2077, not my fault they pushed the next generation patch back so late, but maybe I'll get around to that this year. Let's say Hitman 1 and 2, and the 2016 and 2018 games, since I played Hitman 3. I talked about doing the trilogy, but let's just say Hitman 2016 and Hitman 2. The Pathless, Fire Emblem 3 Houses, Doom 2016, and maybe Eternal, Bloodborne, Valhalla, and maybe Coffee Talk, and Super Mario Sunshine. So yeah, a lot of repeats from last year, but I did terribly with resolutions last year. I also didn't play a lot of 2021 games when I was starting to pull together that list. It was like, ooh, and that's about almost it. It's like maybe Pokemon Shining Pearl and MLB The Show 21, and that was about it. So
it helps when you are writing reviews and you're handed new games. That helps a lot.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Or when you're just looking into weird indie stuff.
So, Joe, as far as recently, how are you doing? What are you playing?
I finished Super Mario Sunshine for the first time.
All right.
I'll talk more about that on Smasherpieces, but the Cliff Notes, I don't like it. It's not very good. But otherwise, I have been making my way through Persona 5 Strikers. I'm almost done. I'm apparently right before the final dungeon in the game. So we're getting there. And then I've also played a lot of the 3D platformer Demon Turf, which was one of our honorable mentions on the Best of 2021 episode. It's very good so far. I have one major problem with it, but overall, it's a very good game.
Isn't that the one with the wild visual style? Like, it's totally different than anything you've really ever seen.
Yeah, the characters are all 2D sprites, including yours, but it's a 3D platformer. It's really weird. It's kind of hard to get used to at first, but once you do sort of get a feel for it, it's very stylish. I like it.
Interesting. I beat Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy. Really liked it a lot. I feel like that's a game that there's no shame in putting that on the easiest difficulty. It's a combat system that doesn't work for everyone, so, crank up the damage from your guns. It's really Mass Effect light in a way with its combat, where it really relies on you assigning skills for your other team members to attack your enemies that way, all the while you have your guns that you're kind of firing upon enemies. So it kind of borrows some reference there, but the game is very Telltale-like with its narrative and how it pulls together decisions that you make throughout the game and changes things for the better or for worse. Then also there's a lot of, I think, I got Last of Us vibes as far as like scouring the environments for pickups to help your character. So fun game. I think it did interesting stuff with Marvel lore overall. And I think the biggest accomplishment is that it gave the characters enough personality and likability so that they at least met or surpassed the MCU Guardians of the Galaxy counterparts. So really neat. I hope to hear other people's thoughts about it as they give it a try. Poke you with a stick. And then also I just started playing Halo Infinite, the campaign there. It's an interesting first hour in the sense that it moves quickly, tries to wipe the slate pretty clean. Like, did you not play Halo 4 and 5? That's okay. You'll be fine right at home here on your new Xbox Series console. But it kind of spurns, I guess, people who did play it and feel a connection to those stories. Anyway, once you get out in the open world, it's pretty fun. I think I'm trying normal difficulty, and that's like right at the limit of my abilities because I'm dying quite a bit, but it's rewarding to get over that. And it's not taking me too many times, especially for some of the boss fights. So yeah, enjoying those quite a lot.
That's good to hear. I'm glad 343 has made a Halo game that most people agree is good for the first time.
Right? It's been a long time coming for sure. Let's talk about some Composer follow-up news quickly. We got some headlines here from the game industry from the past week, and it involves some composers that we've talked about on the show because they're still doing great things. Xbox Game Pass just continues to kill it, honestly, making great selections to add to their subscription-based library of games. Because of their partnership with EA and EA Play, if you have Xbox Game Pass, Mass Effect Legendary Edition has now joined the service. And we've talked about the trilogy of Mass Effect games before on the show with composers Jack Wall, Sam Hulick, and Clint Mansell. Also returning to the service after an absence, Outer Wilds with Andrew Pralo's music. So they also have Spelunky 2 there. I mean, we haven't talked about that, but it's a good first couple weeks of 2022 for Xbox Game Pass.
Play Outer Wilds, everybody. Just trust me on this one. Play Outer Wilds. It's very good. Over on WayForward's side of the field, they actually posted a preview of some of Megan McDuffie's work for the upcoming River City Girls 2. It is a track called Your Like, and it is awesome.
It's really catchy. Go check it out. Always good to hear more of Megan McDuffie's work, especially in a River City Girls sequel. We've talked about Insane in the Rain Music, the YouTuber who makes jazz-based covers of video game music. Well, he announced very recently that he is stopping being a YouTube content creator. He's got a whole video, but the gist of it is, according to his website's bio, he will now be working as a game audio professional, specializing in composing, arranging, and producing original music. So we'll have to keep an eye out for him.
Yeah, I kind of hope to hear him in a game at some point. I think that would be very fun. He's super talented, and the things he's put up to this point are fantastic. So here's hoping he finds success.
His name is Carlos Iene, Eiene for the last name there. So a name to look out for in future game music work.
Team Reptile showed a gameplay trailer for Bomb Rush Cyberpunk, the game that will be featuring music by Hideki Naganuma and other artists. The game looks so good. It looks even better than I thought it was going to look. Oh, it looks great.
Yeah, it's the spiritual successor to Jet Set Radio and Jet Set Radio Future, and they nail that style for sure.
Please be good. Please be good.
I mean, they put together a good game with Lethal League Blaze, so I, got trust in that studio for sure. Austin Wintory and Tina Guo were captured together on Austin Wintory's Instagram, and he confirmed that they're collaborating once more on something unannounced. They were over at Capitol Studios. So, hey, those two, we covered them on the show for their work on Journey with Austin Wintory composing, Tina Guo the cellist, and, anything more that they can work on together, we're all down for.
Yeah, looking forward to seeing what this is. And lastly, they have announced the nominees for Excellence in Audio at the IGF Awards. That's the award ceremony that is held at GDC every year. That's the Indie Game Foundation. We're only going to talk about the Excellence in Audio, but they've announced nominees for all of their things. Those games are Tome, T-O-E-M, Unpacking, Jet the Far Shore, Mini Motorways, Sable, and Inscription. I've literally only played one of these games.
And of course, audio goes beyond just music, so that makes sense when it's like, where's something like Chicory? Well,
especially when Unpacking shows up in there, there's no soundtrack to that game.
Right. So it's interesting choices there, and something to keep an eye on. It's going to be interesting to see, whenever award shows roll out, and we're still going to have, things like the BAFTAs and DICE to look forward to, things to keep an eye on in the next few months.
All right. Let's talk about No Straight Roads. This is a game that we have mentioned on this show a couple of times. We did a giveaway of the vinyl of the soundtrack back in, it would have been like mid 2020.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Wow.
And it was one of the top 10 in our best of 2020 episode. And now I'm finally here to talk about it, and I'm very excited. So No Straight Roads was originally released on August 25th, 2020 for PlayStation 4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC. It was developed by Malaysian studio Metronomilk. It is actually their debut title, and published by Sold Out. So No Straight Roads is an action game that is themed around music. Not really fully a rhythm game, because the player can move and attack without having to adhere to like a beat, as you would sort of expect from a rhythm game. However, enemies and bosses do have attacks that are timed to the music that is playing. So it is still very important that you pay attention to said music. There are two playable characters, Mayday and Zook. They make up the aspiring rock duo Bunk Bed Junction. Both characters can be switched between whenever, with each having their own playstyle. Mayday, the guitarist, has slower but stronger attacks, while Zook, the drummer, has longer, faster combos, and also plays a bit more of a focus on support. If one of these characters dies, it's game over, which makes it a little bit frustrating when you play it in co-op, and that's still the case. Yeah, the co-op in No Straight Roads is kind of tacked on, I think. So, No Straight Roads takes place in Vinyl City, which is a city entirely powered by music and run by the record label NSR. When Bunk Bed Junction auditions to be signed by NSR, they're actually turned down, with the head of NSR, a woman named Tatiana, telling them that rock's days have passed, and now it's all about EDM. During their angry walk home, the city experiences a blackout, and when the only power that immediately returns appears to be for NSR buildings and no one else, Mayday and Zook decide to begin a revolution against the ruling label by hijacking the concerts of the label's top artists, taking control of the various districts of Vinyl City, freeing it from the clutches of Tatiana and climbing their way up the ratings chart. So, with that, what are our experiences with No Straight Roads?
I have literally only heard of it for the first time when you have presented that, hey, there's this opportunity to give away the soundtrack, and it's really good.
Yeah.
And then we listened to the soundtrack, or at least I did, because you had played the game. I think you did the review on Nintendo World Report, right?
I did.
Aha. So I listened to the music. I really like it, and I thought it was a good partnership to get into with Nintendo World Report as well. So that's really all I know of the game, is also that it was included in our best of 2020. But beyond that, no experience playing it, and I'm looking forward to learning more about it.
So for me, I never finished No Straight Roads. I made it to the final boss fight.
Oh, that's always frustrating.
She seems to have an attack that one-shots you if you don't dodge it. And I just couldn't get past that. So eventually I do want to try going back. I think No Straight Roads has the pieces there of a fantastic game, but some of the other pieces kind of just bring it down to, yeah, it's pretty good, but it could be way, way better. And I'm mostly now looking forward to whatever Metronamilk does next, because what if they make another game and they've like ironed out some of the kinks from NSR? Oh my God, that game is going to be absolutely fantastic. So let's talk about how this game came to be. Metronamilk was founded by Dame Dislouden and Juan Husmer, who are both industry veterans who had previously worked on titles like Street Fighter V and Final Fantasy XV. They had been living in Japan and working for those various companies, and then, as they are cousins, they moved back to Malaysia and started up Metronamilk. In terms of inspirations for how the game looks and feels and plays, in terms of like the music aspect, they mentioned games like Gitaru Man, Space Channel 5, and Jet Set Radio. I feel like you can absolutely see the Jet Set Radio in a lot of stuff. Space Channel 5 as well. I'm only partially familiar with Gitaru Man, but I'll say that checks out. In terms of sort of visual style, though, characters having unrealistic skin tones was inspired by Steven Universe. Zook's skin is green, and there's a character whose half of their skin is bright pink and the other half is white, and it's all sorts of wacky, diverse colors, and it's pretty interesting to look at. As for the entire art direction, though, they took inspiration from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, Psychonauts, which you can really see in the character designs.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Zook and May would fit in perfectly in a Psychonauts game. And Scott Pilgrim as well. So while they were thinking about how the characters would play, the team actually kind of focused on seeing them as their musician type before seeing them as the action game character. So the most focus was given to the fact that May is a guitarist, Zook is a drummer. So this sort of translated into Zook having the rapid hits, because when you're a drummer in a rock band, part of your job is to go ham on the drums. Meanwhile, May being given the big charge up, slower, big hit moves was supposed to sort of reflect the spirit of a guitar strum and how you gotta like set that up and strum it all down. That's how you describe playing a guitar.
Power chords!
So when designing the NSR artists, though, the bosses of the game, they actually worked from a primary and then a secondary theme. According to one of the designers in an interview, they said, quote, "Let's take Sayu, for example. Her first theme is being a digital idol. However, that alone does not give us much to work with. That is where the second theme comes in, and in the case of Sayu, it is the underwater theme. This gives us a much bigger canvas to play with and opens up a lot of fun and creative ways of designing her level. In the early stage of designing the cast, we made sure that all of the NSR artists have vastly different themes so that each boss feels unique. And they do. They feel drastically different from each other. This game released to mixed reception in terms of reviews. The highest Metacritic score it has is on PC at 72, Switch and PS4 are sitting at 70. Xbox One sits at 69. While the game did receive like a lot of praise for its story, its characters, and especially its soundtrack, it's a janky game. It's a really janky game. Especially on Switch, it was very buggy. And I already mentioned the whole, like, the co-op, which I believe was only on the Switch version, by the way. It feels kind of tacked on, and like it was added last minute. So I essentially also lived in the mixed reception camp there. I think I gave it a 7.5, which was my way of saying, like, yeah, it's a good game, but boy, howdy, this has all the parts of what could one day be a great game. And hopefully we see that at some point. As far as I can tell, though, it didn't win any awards. Wasn't even nominated for any awards, as far as I can tell, which is a shame. But it was, as we mentioned earlier, in our best of 2020 top 10. And I can't really seem to find any info on what Metronomilk is currently working on. Hopefully their next game nails the gameplay just as hard as I assume it will nail the aesthetics, because if this game nails anything, it's the aesthetics, 100%. All right, there's actually a lot of artists involved in the soundtrack for No Straight Roads, but we're going to talk about one in particular, being Andy Tunstall. So he was born August 13th, 1989 in Darlington, the United Kingdom. He lists his early influences as being video game music in general, but says he got really into rock after he heard Nevermind by Nirvana, and it, quote, changed his life forever.
Yeah, it's a good album to have that credit, yeah.
More recently, though, he has listed his influences as Alice in Chains, Neil Young, Hiromi Uehara, Nobuo Uematsu, and Earth, Wind, and Fire, while also making sure to say way more that weren't mentioned in the interview I got that info from. But actually, I found out while doing this research, he's retired. He is no longer doing music composition professionally. He announced that he was doing that in March of 2021. So he has essentially left the industry. You can follow him on Twitter, though, at Tunnotron3000. That's TUNNOTRON 3000.
I hope whatever he's doing, he's happy with it.
Yeah, I agree. And he's obviously talented, so I imagine he'll be able to pick that up real fast. In terms of his discography in games, he did some of the music for Spark the Electric Jester, Citus 2, which is a game made by Rayark, the people behind Vose, No Straight Roads, and Spark the Electric Jester 2. In terms of historical development research, this soundtrack includes music by Andy Tunstall, Funk Fiction, Falk Ao-Yong, James Landino, Nikki Simmons, Robo-Rob, Masahiro Aoki, Az Samad, and Clyde Robitel. If you're thinking, hey, one of those names sounded really familiar, we have talked about Masahiro Aoki. We talked about him for his work on Street Fighter V. So there you go. There's your connection to stuff earlier. In fact, Tunstall, Ao-Yong, Landino, and Funk Fiction actually worked together previously on the Sonic fan game Sonic After the Sequel, and those three also worked on the Sonic-inspired game Spark the Electric Jester. All four of them make up a group that calls itself Click Track. That's CLIQTRACK. And the only other thing that I feel I should mention is this game has a dynamic soundtrack in that when you are fighting bosses, the music switches to a rock version when you have the upper hand. And it's really cool because, remember, narratively, you are hijacking their concert. So it really, really portrays that super well.
You're bringing back the power of rock, yeah.
Yeah, and also just when you're listening to the clips here, you should listen to the full songs for like all of them because they don't just loop. The music changes over time as you hit different phases of the boss fights. Because for some of the music, you can hear it and if you've played the game, you could say, oh, I remember exactly what attack this part of the music was supposed to signal was coming. And it's really neat. It's a really, really neat way of doing music.
It's a good way to tie the two together. Yeah. I mean, we can talk about how music sounds great on its own, but when you have that pairing with a gameplay moment, it makes it even more special.
Very much so. So let's get into it, shall we? And I think that it's only fair we start on critical track number 1, main theme of NSR. The song was composed by Andy Tunstall. This is the title screen theme, and it's just pure rock. I assume this is supposed to be Bunk Bed Junction playing this song. And I really, really think that this song does a great job at establishing the general attitude of the game and also Mayday and Zook themselves. It's got this fun, energetic energy to it, but it sounds like it's a song that could fuel a revolution, if that makes sense.
Yeah, very bright and positive. You definitely get like the guitar and the drums being front and center, and that makes sense for the characters and what they play and what their motivations are. It's interesting now having that narrative context of showing the power of rock and having it kind of take back control of the city. It's a neat idea.
Yeah, and it works super well. All right, let's talk about some boss fight themes, which are all the rest of the tracks on the Critical 5, because that's pretty much where the best music lives in this game. The first one is Critical Track number 2 versus DJ Subatomic Supernova. What a name. This song was composed by Funk Fiction. It is the first boss in the game, and it's just this pure electronic goodness, but I also really like that it's very low-key and the beat is very clear. It's very easy to find the beat of this song because it's the first boss, and this is the first time the player has done an encounter like this, essentially. And I think that's a really, really good way to start. It's also aesthetically really, really tied into Subatomic Supernova's whole aesthetic is space. So he's like throwing planets at you and stuff. So it really does a good job of sort of bringing that across too, with like almost feels like an airy electronic piece.
I really like that observation of, for it being a first boss, beat's got to be very clear. You got to be, tapping your toe to it, and it's got to be slower. So it's, really giving you that kind of tutorial boss fight in a way, at least for a first one. Nothing wrong with disco vibes. I know, that the band's trying to fight back against, the whole EDM thing, but I'm like, swallow me whole. I'm here for the disco.
Yeah, this song is absolutely great. It's disco as hell. My favorite song in the entire game is actually Critical Track number 3, though, being Versus Sayu. The song was composed by James Landino and Nikki Simmons. Nikki Simmons is also the vocalist behind the song. There was a Japanese version actually on the soundtrack with vocals by Ai Yamamoto. Like I said, this is my favorite song of the game. And Sayu is probably my favorite of the character designs in the game. She's got the strongest theming. She's aesthetically the best, which is unfortunate because she is also my least favorite boss in the entire game. Her fight is like just super visually busy, and it's kind of difficult to tell what's happening. But this song, though, this song is so good. It's the only boss fight with vocals to it, which is awesome. And Sayu herself being like this cutesy mermaid VTuber almost is perfect. And also laser aimed at me now. It wasn't when that game came out, but it is now. I don't know. This song is so good. It's so good.
I love the vocal drop, and that's why I definitely wanted to make sure that it was included in the clip here. Because, yeah, it does stand out, and it's so catchy and a really good earworm to listen to. But it's interesting that it's, like, on its own because she's an idol and all that. You'd almost hope that, like, it would be more characters like this and more, pop stars or electronic stars, whatever. But, for it to be one, especially when you mentioned it, mentioned Sayu in the research, it stands out in a very good way. I'm in it for it.
Mm-hmm. She is an absolutely delightful fight when you're not playing it. But yeah, I love Sayu. Unfortunately, the rock version of this song cuts the vocals out, which is kind of a bummer. But, well, we'll get to that later. Critical track number 4, though, is actually my second favorite song in the game, being Versus Yinu. This song was composed by Falk Aoyong. I know what you're thinking. That didn't sound like EDM. Next question. Anyways, it's a really good song. You're supposed to be fighting EDM artists, but there's this like 11-year-old piano prodigy. And her mom, obviously. You're fighting her mom as well, who is a big red monster lady. But I really, really, really dig this song. It has a Yoko Shimomura flavor almost in some of the pieces of the melody. This is one of those where I hear a part of the song and I'm like, oh, I know exactly what move, what attack Yinu is doing at this exact point. It's the dun 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 dun. There's projectiles that are timed to that section of the song. It's really neat. I like it a lot. And I think that this boss fight is the first time that the sort of music-based gameplay really, really hits its stride, because it's my favorite boss in the game. And it even has a great joke at the beginning where if you listen to the beginning of the song, it's Paco Bell's canon for just a few seconds.
Yes, I thought you weren't going to mention it, but at least I was going to, yeah.
And when you start the boss fight, Mayday literally says, haven't we heard this song like 1,000 times? And then the fight starts. And Zeus like, I think we might have just gotten owned by a child. It's a great moment. It's a great fight. I really like the Yinu fight.
For sure. And yeah, of course it's not in the clip, but you're right, at the beginning of the piece. That sure is canon and D. Okay. But it definitely becomes its own thing to the point where, yeah, I think you get the Yoko Shimomura Kingdom Hearts vibes when it's piano and orchestra. And it's like, oh yeah, those two things together sure have that sort of style to it. Yeah, really neat to kind of hear a mix-up with a piano player.
Yeah, it's a nice change of pace. The last track on the Critical 5, the 5th critical track, it is Versus Tatiana. This song was composed by Masahiro Aoki, so there we go, we got him in there. This is the final boss theme against Tatiana, and it's the only boss track that is rock from the very beginning, because you're not hijacking a concert to fight Tatiana. She's the head of a record label, not one of her artists.
Okay, but is she pulling out a guitar and shredding? Like, what the hell?
Well, that's part of the plot. There is a narrative reason for this suddenly being a rock piece at the beginning. It's a really, really aesthetically cool fight, and it has some really cool mechanics, except for that one where she can take you from full health to dead in one swipe. And then you have to sit through, like, a full minute of unskippable cutscene to get back up to her. But that's neither here nor there. Yeah, that's the main reason why I stopped. But this song is absolutely fantastic. It is so cool. It is Masahiro Aoki as hell. I could hear this being maybe in a Street Fighter game, but oh man, he went in real hard on this. He brought his A game.
I will always dig Masahiro Aoki contributions to games. Even like we talked about him working on Hades and delivering that extra stage of the final boss fight. I'm just so good. Yeah, the shredding of the guitar solos here, brilliant. Love this one. This is so good. And again, a shame to pick 30 seconds because even like the start of the piece is so good.
Yeah, all of these songs go places throughout their playtime. They're really fun. If you like the samples you have heard, you should absolutely go listen to the full soundtrack. It is super worth your time. And honestly, give the game a shot too. I don't know. You might enjoy it. All right, for Cutting Room Floor, I cheated and figured I really don't want to leave these two tracks up, so they're on the cutting room floor for you. Hit me.
All right, I picked two totally of my own volition. The first one I picked is 4+. I feel like it's best for you to talk about them, Joe.
Okay. This one was composed by Andy Tunstall. This plays during Bunk Bed Junction's audition, which serves as the game's tutorial, where it teaches you how the fighting works and how enemies time their attacks to the rhythm of the song. And I don't know, this is just a really good piece. It's just really cool. More good rock goodness.
This is Sonic Adventure vibes.
Yeah, yeah, very much so.
100%. So I dig it. I like it, and I'm good picking it. The other one is another boss fight, and it's versus 1010.
So this one was composed by James Landino. This is a fight against the boy band 1010, who are 4 robotic military-themed boy band members.
Thus the binary. Got it.
Yes. They're a lot of fun. They have vocals during their fight, just not in the song, obviously. But they're all auto-tuned, so it's like really... Even when they're not really singing, it's a really, really fun boss fight. But I think it's the weakest boss theme. But I mean, as it was, they were the only one that was going to get left out. So I figured might as well put them in here.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear like the different synth instruments used. And it kind of reminds me of, it's like, oh, well, this is Sonic Adventure. This is almost like Sonic Starlight Carnival. So...
Yeah, it's just good and pairs well with overly auto-tuned vocals. I absolutely love 1010. They're super funny. And when you see them, their silhouette at the beginning of the game, my roommate Ben was like, I want to learn more about the delightful children from down the lane. from Kids Next Door, which is exactly what they look like. My 2 tracks on the cutting room floor. The first one is the last of the boss themes that is in the game. It's Versus Eve. The song was composed by Funk Fiction. It's got this really surreal vibe to match Eve's sort of weird aesthetic. She's very Lady Gaga. She's the Lady Gaga analog, I feel like, where her entire fight is hands. Like, just hands coming out of the walls and floors that you have to avoid to get to her. It's a really weird fight. But I think this song really helps that sort of surreal aspect to it. Eve is probably the most prominent of the NSR artists in the story. She has like a lot of cutscenes. She's the last boss before you go take on Tatiana. And narratively, she has very close connections with Zook's backstory. So, And I wanted to get her in here as well.
How wild is it that within 20 seconds, there's like 3 vibes and it just keeps you constantly on your toes, where it's just like it's mixing up the rhythm and the syncopation and all that. That's got to be really difficult to translate into battle and like keep on top of it all.
And the final track on the cutting room floor is DK West Encounter 1.
Oh, you should see West in school. He ain't nothing but a ridicule. He thinks he's a top student, but when in truth he's nothing but imprudent. Feels like he's entitled to everything. Tells the birds for him they should sing. Chest up, walks around proud, with a small push and he was sure drop now.
This was composed by Oz Samad and Clyde Robitel. It's a rap battle. So after beating Sayu, or maybe even after beating Yinu, somewhere around that time, a character named DK West is brought in by Tatiana, who, it turns out, DK West is Zook's brother. And they don't get along. As well as DK West actually led his own revolution to attempt to sort of dethrone NSR, with him being rap instead of EDM or rock.
Interesting.
And he was driven out as well. So you don't fight DK West in a boss fight. It's a rhythm game that requires you control 2 hands on 2 tracks separately, and you have to avoid hitting the notes as they come down the note highway. It's really, really hard. This is the only one that is required for story progression. There are 2 others. I can't get past the second one. The second one is so hard that Matrona Milk themselves had to put out a video about how to do it.
Oh my God.
They're unbelievably difficult. But they have these different tones to them. In fact, 3 actually brings May into rap instead of Zook, which is, she's not as good at it, but she's still pretty all right at it, honestly. And I don't know, I think this song is very important because it not only has like a narrative that is followed up throughout the whole thing, but it's just kind of a neat group of performances. I don't know.
DK West. He is our man.
He's our man and he's the best.
He is the best.
When he's not talking, he speaks, I think, French? I don't remember what language he talks. I don't think it's French. I think I am completely wrong on that, but it's not English, and it is a real language, so...
Well, I had to Google search what the chanting was, because it almost sounded like he's so metal. And I'm like, but wait, that is like a rock thing. I don't get it.
It's fun. I like DK West a lot, and the side plot that goes places. It's fun. So what will I never forget about No Straight Roads? This is already one of the best soundtracks of the decade, and we're like 2 years into the decade. I don't think this is a soundtrack I'm going to forget anytime soon. It is absolutely fantastic. All of the character designs are super memorable and great. Even the boy band, whose entire joke is they're mass produced, even they are really memorable and fun to interact with. I think this is probably aesthetically among the best games I have ever seen. Boy howdy, I hope they iron out some of the kinks in their next game, if they make one.
Yeah, I hope that they are able to make another game because, yeah, the music here is excellent, and I'm really happy we got to partner with that release, and that was a really neat opportunity for the show.
I'm looking forward to No Straight Roads 2, or honestly, whatever they come out with. And, we're open for more partnerships in that way, guys. Just if anybody from Matrona Milk is listening, hit us up. So, for our transition, when I was talking about Sayu, remember when I was like, oh man, the rock version takes the vocals out, and that's a bummer. Turns out, you know who agreed with me? Nikki Simmons, the vocalist behind Sayu, because she, on her YouTube channel, put together a rock version of Versus Sayu alongside Su Ling Chan and Stephen Bones, who are the voice actors for Mayday and Zook. And it's so good. It's so good. So enjoy that, and we'll be right back.
It is finally time to talk about the original Devil May Cry on this show. And it's our third time talking about the franchise. We talked about Devil May Cry 3 in episode 6. That was one of your contributions, famously paired with Kirby's Epic Yarn.
Best pairing. Only topped last year.
Absolutely. And then I brought Devil May Cry 5 to the show in episode 94. But Devil May Cry released August 23rd, 2001 for PlayStation 2 in Japan. North America got the game on October 16th, and PAL got it on December 7th. All in 2001, at least, so that's good. It became part of the original trilogy of Devil May Cry games that made up the Devil May Cry HD collection that released in 2012 on Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3. That HD collection made its way onto PS4, Xbox One, and PC in 2018, and the Nintendo Switch broke out each of those games in the trilogy as standalone versions. The original Devil May Cry version for Nintendo Switch launched June 25th, 2019. The game was developed by Team Little Devils, which is a group within Capcom Production Studio 4, and the game is published by Capcom. Devil May Cry is a third-person, arcade-style, hack-and-slash, melee-focused action-adventure game, in which the gameplay consists of levels, called missions, where players must fight numerous enemies, perform platforming tasks, and occasionally solve puzzles to progress through the story. Combat involves stringing together combos between sword and gun weapons. The better a player does in combat in terms of style and not being hit by enemies, they are rewarded with a letter grade. Then, during combat, players can fill up and use a limited time Devil Trigger gauge, which gives the player a more demonic appearance. It increases strength and defense, slowly restores health, and grants special attacks. There are also secret missions in these levels, and these are optional side tasks with win conditions, but if you clear them, it provides permanent power-ups. Grades are then given out at the end of the mission, and that's all based on completion time, the amount of red orb currency collected, the grades from your stylish combat, item usage, and damage taken. And so as a result, the score attack mission nature of the game encourages replayability. Can you get better scores on these missions? Can you complete all of the side missions, etc., etc. The story of Devil May Cry. Dante is one of the twin sons of Sparta, a demon knight who sided with humanity and drove back an invasion of the human world by demons about 2,000 years before the series' events. Devil May Cry begins with Dante, a mercenary that specializes in the paranormal, being attacked in his office by a mysterious woman named Trish. He impresses her by easily brushing off her assault, and explains that for years he has hunted demons in pursuit of the ones who killed his mother and twin brother. Trish explains that her attack was a test, and that the demon emperor Mundus, who Dante holds responsible for the deaths of his family, is planning to cross over into the human world after centuries of imprisonment. This leads Dante to an immense castle on the mysterious Malay Island, where Mundus has steadily grown his power and is preparing for ascension. Who is Trish, and why does she know about Dante? How is the masked Dark Knight Nello Angelo so powerful? And can Dante stop Mundus from taking over the human world? Joe, here's where I'll ask you, what are our experiences with Devil May Cry?
This one's weird because I've watched a Let's Play of Devil May Cry 1, but I did not retain a huge amount of it because it's honestly kind of generic, especially when compared to the other 3 Devil May Cry games that exist.
Not counting 2.
Yeah, there's never been a Devil May Cry 2. What are you talking about? Ask anybody, they'll tell you the same. It's also this really weird point in time where this is a pre-Ruben Langdon Dante.
Yes.
So he's really weird, and he's sort of, if I remember correctly, kind of serious, like a lot more serious than any version of Dante we have known since then.
Yes.
And it all comes together in sort of a weird package. I know the one scene and line read that everybody knows, and that's the only one.
You want to give your shot at it?
I was supposed to be the one to fill your dark soul with light.
Oh, that's pretty good.
That peaked the mic too. I'm sure that'll be great. I mean, to be fair, it peaks the mic in the game as well. We're just being authentic. But yeah, I know that scene, and I remember the stuff with Nello Angelo, and that's really it. When I think of Mundus, I think of what he is in the reboot.
Oh my god, me too.
Yep. Nobody likes. Where he's just Wilson Fisk. He's just Wilson Fisk with demon powers. It's so stupid. It's probably the one that I have the least experience with that's not DMC2.
Yeah, same. I remember watching the story of this game because I tried playing this game and it has not aged well. It's also difficult. I got stopped really early as far as I don't understand how to beat this boss. And it's like Phantom. It's like the first one. So maybe that's just on me. And I suck at those early character action games, but also it's rough and how it's carried over. I'm glad the series has continued to what it is, and Devil May Cry 5 is awesome, but the original one is rough, especially with some of those vocal performances and the like. But I feel like some of the music tracks are important foundations to the franchise, and so I really wanted to bring it to the show to kind of here's where we started from. We've talked about 3 and 5, and they have amazing soundtracks, but the original is also pretty good.
We have one more after this.
That's true.
4 is the only other Devil May Cry game. We will not be taking questions.
But we could also talk about the DMC reboot.
Maybe.
I will suffer. I will hate.
The character that Subhuman was actually written to be the theme of.
Yes, that's right. But no, I figured it was good to bring this to the show, finally. So how did Devil May Cry get made, get put through development? Well, we've actually talked about it before. See, when you covered Resident Evil 4 on the show, you mentioned that the earliest incarnation of Resident Evil 4 became what we know as Devil May Cry. To quote from your research, quote, "Try as they might, the team just could not get the concepts of cool and stylish to work for Resident Evil, and then still make sense with Resident Evil's tone. With an invincible and hyper-intelligent man named Tony given superpowers by biotechnology developed by Umbrella. Eventually, Shinji Mikami remarked that he felt this was too far from the survival horror genre for a Resident Evil game, and suggested the team turn the project into a new IP instead, with Hideki Kamiya leaving RE4's team to work on this new game. Tony was changed to Dante, Biotech was changed to Demons, and this RE4 prototype officially was renamed to Devil May Cry, releasing in 2001 for the PS2. So yeah, that's one of the big swerves in creating a whole new franchise on its own.
There's like 3 games that were Resident Evil 4 that then became not Resident Evil 4. Devil May Cry is obviously the most famous one, but I believe Haunting Ground, which I mentioned as one of my resolutions near the beginning of the show, I believe that was also based on a prototype for Resident Evil 4.
Interesting. So, yeah, a lot of possible ideas that came from that fountain, so to speak. So, when Hideki Kamiya got to eventually rewrite the story, he set it in a world full of demons, taking it from the Italian epic poem Divine Comedy by Dante Alighieri, and so as a result, he changed the hero's name to Dante. The title character from Buichi Terasawa's manga series Cobra served as the basis for Dante's personality. See, it was all based on what Kamiya saw as cool, in that he perceives Dante as, quote, a character that you would want to go out drinking with. Someone who wasn't a show-off, but would instead, quote, pull some ridiculous, mischievous joke to endear people to him.
Eventually, they dropped the not a show-off part, because that's all Dante does, though he's not as bad as Nero.
That's true. And Dante wears red because it is a traditionally heroic color in Japan. During a test play for another Capcom PS2 game, Onimusha Warlords, Kamiya discovered a bug where enemies could be kept in the air by slashing them repeatedly. And this led to the inclusion of juggles by gunfire and sword strikes in Devil May Cry. So a bug from another game inspired a core gameplay feature in DMC.
That's like the second time in Capcom's history, considering combos in Street Fighter were also the result of a bug.
Right, that's true. And Capcom's 1989 arcade game, Strider, was also influential for its over-the-top action. The combat gameplay was designed first, and then the mission structure was added later, with the difficulty intended as an intentional challenge for those who played lighter, more casual games. Devil May Cry reviewed exceptionally well at its time, with a Metacritic average of 94. Critics praised its gameplay innovations, action, visuals, camera control, and gothic ambiance. The critiques, though, included its difficulty level, an unusual control scheme, and a lack of configuration options.
If I remember correctly, camera was also on there, but that goes without saying in 3D games in 2001.
It was still an adjustment period. The Switch version, though, does show that the game has not held up well over 20 years, with a Metacritic average of 74. It's a little rough in the graphics department when you compare it to games, or how you'd expect them to scale up in an HD collection. It's very much like, oh yeah, this HD collection was done in 2012, and we're still trying to pass it off in 2019. So yeah, leave that as it is. And then, yeah, just the gameplay is, we've seen better character action games, honestly. Once you play Bayonetta, another Kamiya classic, like, Bayonetta was all about learning the lessons from Devil May Cry, honestly.
I'm gonna die when we get there for masterpieces, though. Let me tell you.
Yeah, well, I mean, you at least put it on the easiest difficulty. You'll be fine. So the estimated sales of the game are 3.56 million copies sold, with 2.16 million on PlayStation 2 and 1.4 million from the HD collection. 2001 was a different time in Game Awards, so I didn't really see this nominated for like any of the big, there obviously weren't any Game Awards or Spike Video Game Awards. I don't think the BAFTAs were a thing for games yet, and I didn't find this nominated for any Academy of Interactive Arts and Sciences Awards, which we now know as DICE, but it was noted that it was nominated for GameSpot's annual Best Action Adventure Game prize among console games, and that ended up going to Grand Theft Auto 3. So 2001 also a really good year for games, just in general, and so when Devil May Cry, falls short to GTA 3, it's a powerful year. But Devil May Cry established the subgenre of character action games. Games like God of War, Metal Gear Rising, Bayonetta, the list goes on. It's, one character, whether they're punching or slashing with a sword or any sort of melee combat, taking on hordes of enemies, could be in a mission sort of structure. It really established the foundation there all the way back to Devil May Cry. And of course, it kicked off a franchise with the game that doesn't exist, 2003's Devil May Cry 2, which was a sequel.
That got canceled?
Oh, yeah, it totally got canceled. You're right. 2005's prequel with Devil May Cry 3. Then 2008's Devil May Cry 4, that introduced Nero as a sequel. Then you had 2013's odd reboot from Ninja Theory. And then 2019's sequel of 4 with Devil May Cry 5. Devil May Cry characters would appear in Beautiful Joe, Shin Megami Tensei 3 Nocturne, featuring Dante from the Devil May Cry series, famously, and Marvel vs. Capcom 3 and Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite. There was a Dante Mii costume in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. There was an anime series for Devil May Cry called Devil May Cry the Animated Series, and that premiered on Japan's WoW WoW TV network in June 2007. But Adi Shankar, who produced a successful Castlevania anime series for Netflix, has Devil May Cry as his next project.
Hopefully it'll be good.
Yeah, fingers crossed. I'm looking forward to that one. I didn't see Castlevania, but
Castlevania is also very good.
Yeah, I heard good things. Didn't see it, but I'm definitely tempted to check out Devil May Cry. And it's another one of those movies where like film rights were obtained. For this one was back in 2011, but we haven't heard anything. So let's talk about one of the composers for the original Devil May Cry, and this is Masato Kouda. Masato Kouda was born on October 24th, 1971 in Fujiyoshida, Yamanashi Prefecture in Japan, and he is blood type B. Sometimes goes by different aliases, including Masato Kouda, C-O-D-A, which is a musical term as opposed to K-O-U-D-A, and Pia-Com3Go. I don't know what that one is from.
Game bug, it seems.
Yeah, maybe. It's like, we're trying to hide our identities, so let's just throw some gibberish there. He took 4 years of classical piano lessons as a child, and then later played keyboard for a rock band. He's enjoyed soundtracks from an early age, particularly appreciating John Williams' orchestral scores, noting Close Encounters of the Third Kind as like his first big eye-opening experience, and then of course Star Wars and Jaws. As he approached adulthood, he also began to consider the possibilities of video game music, feeling particularly amazed by the orchestrated introduction to Final Fantasy IV and the various other creations after that by Nobuo Uematsu. He considered a career as a game composer and dreamed what it would be like to record with a full orchestra someday, which, of course, he would get to do. After receiving extensive classical training at the Kunitachi College of Music, he joined Capcom's sound team in April 1994, a month after graduating. He went freelance in 2003 and made a big industry splash with the score to the original Monster Hunter. He also, on the side, reunited with his former Capcom colleague Naoshi Mizuta to become a member of the Final Fantasy XI tribute band, the Star Onions, in 2005, and they would perform music live at Final Fantasy fan events. He then joined Design Wave Co. in 2008, where he seemingly still is there today. This was a company that at one time Masakazu Sugimori of Ace Attorney fame was a part of. Kouda has an interesting quote about how he visualizes his music, saying, quote, "Monster Hunter themes in the key of E-flat are difficult for musicians to perform. If you lower the key, it becomes much easier to play. Now, there is a huge difference in the sounds of a D and an E-flat chord. The way I might describe their textures is that D is like a primary color, while E-flat is like a mossy green." And I've always found those sort of parallels so interesting because some people can totally get it and visualize it, and some people are like, what are you talking about? It's like the meme that was kind of going around recently with like musical tones and all that and the moods that they kind of give off. It's a similar feeling there.
He probably has synesthesia, honestly.
I would not be surprised if he did, because that seems very typical of those who do have that. He also mentions the benefits of being a music when composing, saying, quote, "These days it's common to make music all by oneself, from the composition to the arrangement. For video game music, it's natural to go about doing all the encoding and mixing alone. However, that way you never come to understand what actual guitars and other instruments are capable of. Having an in-depth knowledge of various instruments' characteristics can be essential to fulfilling your potential as an electronic musician." Saying it's not impossible to make music, but having an understanding of what instruments can do just broadens your horizons there. You can follow him on Twitter at MTOKouda, MTOCODA. So Masato Kouda's discography includes the first two Devil May Cry games, the Monster Hunter series with the original Monster Hunter 2, Freedom, Freedom 2, and Freedom Unite. He joined in the Wild Arms franchise with 4, 5, and XF, and also the Fire Emblem franchise with Fates and Three Houses. He's also composed for Cyberbots Full Metal Madness, Mega Man 2 The Power Fighters, Darkstalkers 3, Marvel vs. Capcom Clash of Superheroes, El Shaddai Ascension of the Metatron, The Wonderful 101, Conception 2 Children of the Seven Stars, Project Cross Zone 2, Hey Pikmin, My Hero 1's Justice, and Ghosts and Goblins Resurrection.
I did not think we were going to bring up Conception on this show at any point.
Yeah!
That's the weird PSP pregnancy JRPG.
The sequel was on Vita.
Oh,
but yes,
man.
The original was on PSP.
Much better.
He is also an arranger that helps with Super Smash Bros. So for Super Smash Bros. Brawl, he arranged a remix of Theme of Samus Aran's Space Warrior from Super Metroid, Battle Team Galactic from Pokemon Diamond and Pearl, and Humoresque of a Little Dog from Mother. In Smash Wii U and 3DS, he did the arrangements for Light Plane and its vocal mix from Pilot Wings, and Bath Time Theme and its vocal mix from Nintendogs.
Yeah!
And in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, he arranged a remix of Lost in Thoughts All Alone from Fire Emblem Fates. So that's the second week in a row that we're mentioning that song.
Oh boy, that is... Oh man. Okay. That's more than most people should mention it, I feel like. And I like that song.
The historical development research for Devil May Cry includes the composers on the project being Masami Ueda, who is part of Clover Studio, and we covered him for his work on Okami. Misao Sembongi, part of Clover Studio, and we cover them on RE4 for Resident Evil 4, and Masato Kouda. Now, Ueda aimed for the core of the soundtrack to be upbeat and cool, to match the overall theme and pace of the action, as well as Dante's personality. But he nevertheless aimed to capture the gothic setting and the dark story, so you get some big organs, some chorals in there. Given the contrasting elements of the game with the action and the gothic, you have all these different kinds of music styles, including orchestral, techno, rock, ambient gothic, and world music. But still, the game retains a strong emphasis on melodies and rhythms. And we can hear that here in the 5 critical tracks for the original Devil May Cry. We start with critical track number 1, Public Enemy. Right off the bat, we start with a piece that was composed by Masato Kouda. And you are going to hear this one a lot, especially early on, because this is the regular battle theme 1. So, right from the beginning of the game, the main normal battle theme just taking on hordes of enemies. You're hearing this track, and it's a pretty straightforward piece, but you're definitely hearing how it's the melodies and the rhythms, like important, simple driving rhythm and melody, just kind of gets you in that groove of what Devil May Cry's vibe is, while you're also kind of hearing like these backing instruments that kind of add to like the gothic or atmospheric sort of nature to it. So it's not all just like meow shredding rock guitar or just a rhythm guitar essentially, but kind of tries to contribute both at the same time. A really straightforward piece that you'll hear a lot and honestly probably get sick of, but important to include here in the Critical 5.
And you can absolutely sort of feel this song and the whole soundtrack, honestly, like its impact on like Devil May Cry 3, even though like that game represents a different era of Devil May Cry music in general, where it's a little bit heavier into the metal. And it's continued going that way, but like that sort of gothic feel is always there. And I think this song, honestly, it's good, but also it's really repetitive for a battle song.
Yep, it's a lot, and it keeps at it for sure. But then we mix things up with number 2 on the Critical 5 here, and this is Psycho Siren. All right, we discovered a key or an instrument on our synth board. Okay. This is composed by Masami Ueda, and it is the mid-boss battle theme. So this one cranks up the tempo even more, keeps up that frenetic pace. Again, like the guitar and the drums, like you're really establishing that feeling, and then you're bringing in that woo, that siren coming in. Oh, yes. But it kind of works because you're kind of dealing with some darker demons here, some bigger threats. And so the danger is up. And so as that is reflected here with a siren. Another piece that is pretty well known in the game and a good inclusion here, I think. But just kind of taking that Public Enemy track, especially early on in the game, but cranking it up more and adding this element of danger.
And boy, that sound font must have been really expensive because they are bringing all the mileage they can get out of that siren. This is really cool. And again, like one of those where you can see the path from here to what Devil May Cry music is now. Like this one's still pretty repetitive, but I think the siren sounds managed to make it a little bit more interesting to listen to than Public Enemy. And I don't know. It's good. I like this song. It's good.
I think we also have to just put in context. So you remember, this is 2001. We're not in like the age of streaming music where we've recorded orchestras beforehand and whatever live instruments we can. Like, this is definitely doing what we can with synths and midis and mixing it on the computer in like basic computers at that time, so it's still really neat here. And we continue to up the stakes with number 3 on the Critical 5. This is Ultraviolet. It almost feels like as the game goes on, or at least with these clips, we're trying more and more unique things, especially as the battle stakes raise. And this represents the first encounter with Nello Angelo. It's composed by Masami Ueda. I like how this one starts, as you hear in the clip. It's pretty representative of the piece, how it starts with this organ by itself, and then it ratchets up into adding the these like synth and low bass notes kind of coming in with the drum beat. It's a neat blend while the organ continues and has that bit of gothic appeal in a way. And there's kind of a mystery here of who is Nello Angelo and how is this dark night so powerful, and will this be the last we see of them? Mysteries for the game to be sure. But this is a really neat battle track, and I like this one a lot.
I like the next track the best, I think, but this is probably a close second in my rankings. And obviously, Nello Angelo, like I mentioned earlier, one of the only things I remember about Devil May Cry 1. So he is obviously like an impactful part of the game.
Yeah, absolutely. An impactful part of the game, not only on the story, but a tough fight and the music to go with it. And yeah, not the first time you see them in the game. But when we get to number 4 on the Critical 5, you're right. This is the track from the game, and it's Lock and Load. Yeah. This is the piece, for sure. If there's anything that's, like, carried over as, like, Dante's theme from the first game, and I know, like, once you hit 3, it's, Devils Never Cry. But this one here, for Lock and Load, we pick it up kind of at the end of the loop, where it's doing some cool things with the rhythm. And then it's got this weird little as it loops back. But it's doing some cool things with like almost record scratches and or record slowing. Really cool stuff here. And this is the normal battle music too. And so when you're into the game, like this becomes the normal battle theme. And I feel like this one wins because you're like, oh God, the repetitive nature of Public Enemy, we're finally free of that. And this one's doing just more cool things. This also begins to play when the enemy blade appears. There's also a version called Lock and Load Original on the soundtrack, which is like the last track, and I feel like it's scrapping that intro where Blade appears. But this track is great. If there's one piece you remember from this game, Lock and Load.
Yeah, this is the title. This is the track. Also, this song got brought into Marvel vs. Capcom 3. It's Trish's theme.
That's right. How weird is that?
Yeah, it gets a remix of it in that game, which I kind of prefer that version, but I think this is the most well-known track in the original Devil May Cry for a reason. I also just like the near the end of the track. That's the part that I think I associate with this song the hardest. It's such an interesting, even if kind of simple track, and yeah, it's much better than Public Enemy, I'll be real.
Oh, yeah, for sure. It's almost like in Gold and Silver, that whole thing with going to Kanto and hearing different battle music there. It's like, oh, it's such a relief to hear something new and fresh. I think it's a fair comparison. But we wrap things up with the final boss battle. Critical track number 5 for the original Devil May Cry is Legendary Battle. We are back to this one being composed by Masato Kouda. And oh man, what a good piece this one is. I really like this one a lot. This is the first phase of the final battle with Demon Emperor Mundus. It's noted as being the aerial phase. But yeah, just hearing the chords here, and I don't know about you, but it gives me flashbacks, flash forwards in a way like this track had to have inspired the Virgil battle music from Devil May Cry theme. Like, the chords are right there. It sounds a lot like it. And it just sounds so cool and so good.
It's really good, and I'm realizing that I don't even remember what this fight looks like.
Right? Oh my gosh. Yeah, same.
There's nothing. I don't remember anything about the fight with Mundus at all. Oh boy. Boy, howdy, this series didn't actually start until 3, huh? But it's a really, really good piece. I still like Lock and Load and Ultraviolet just a tad more.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, no, this is good stuff still.
Absolutely. I have a couple more interesting tracks on the cutting room floor, just as like little asides here to kind of flesh things out. The first of these is Devil's Sunday. So this is one of the first pieces that you'll hear in the game. It's composed by Masami Ueda, and it's credited on the soundtrack as Theme of Sparta, where it plays during character exposition at the beginning, kind of giving the background of the story, and really setting the tone with that gothic style, right? With the organs, with the vocals and the chorus. It's a simple piece. It's a short piece. You're almost playing like the full track here, but it's an important one that kind of gets you established right away before you get the edgy vibes with Dante. But this is like setting the framework for the narrative.
Yeah, this reminds me about some of the stuff that I know very briefly about in Devil May Cry 4, which I haven't really dove into the soundtrack for that game, but there's a lot of like this gothic choir stuff in 4. A lot more even than I think there is in 3.
Mm-hmm. Which makes sense because you're dealing with a church in 4, so yeah.
Yeah. And so I feel like, again, you can specifically see some of the roots of that in there as well. And I just think that's neat.
Absolutely. And the other one on the cutting room floor for me is Dante and Trish, Seeds of Love.
Okay, let's get it over with in 10 minutes. Can't let a single one of those suckers live.
5 minutes.
More than enough.
Boy, if you know the story of Devil May Cry, this is a weird title for a name.
Yep, it sure is. So we'll just kind of leave that there. But you also get to hear Dante's voice actor and how weird it is to have it not be Ruben Langdon. This one is composed by Masami Ueda, which makes sense because I believe he was also a composer on Resident Evil 2. And I don't know what it was with Capcom at the time, the late 90s, the early 2000s, to put on their soundtrack, like, both Resident Evil 2, the original one, and this one, put little voice snippets from the characters before going into this ending credits theme. In Resident Evil 2, it was Leon being like, hey, we gotta do what it takes to stop Umbrella. And then we got this one, which is them being a little weird and cagey and funny with each other. I mean, the end credits theme, it is what it is. It's fine for an end credits. I just think it's really funny that we're like, let's have characters talking in our end credits track on the OST.
Yeah, and obviously Devil May Cry has weird credits where you are playing.
Yes.
And you get an extra scene if you do well enough when you are playing. It's a really interesting way of doing credits. I can't actually think of another game series that does it that way.
With that kind of reward, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but yeah, it's a little bit weird, especially listening to the clip while recording of, oh, there's voice acting in this song. Like, not singing, just they're Dante and Trish are talking.
Yeah.
I just can't get over the title, man. I can't get over the title.
Especially with seeds. Maybe. Okay. All right. What will I never forget about the original Devil May Cry? Well, I've obviously forgotten a lot about it. But the tracks like Lock and Load, it's establishing a music sense that kind of carries over throughout the franchise. And, establishing a cool character like Dante, even though his character really went through some revisions and, in 3 for the best, honestly. But to create a cool video game character, it's an important establishing point for this franchise.
And, maybe you were supposed to fill her dark soul with light.
With light!
With light! Oh, it's such a good line read. It's the best. Oh, God bless you, early 2000s voice acting in video games.
All right, so No Straight Roads and Devil May Cry, both action games that do really interesting things for the genre, for what an action game can be. You got some music and rhythm in No Straight Roads. You have establishing the whole character action genre as a thing for Devil May Cry. But man, both really good soundtracks. Ones that we've been itching to bring to the show for a long time. If that were a theme, that would also be like a sub-theme there, I think. So that will do it for us this week on Original Soundchat. You can find me on Twitter at Pete Speakeasy. Joe is over at String Pixel. The video version of the show is on the Rhymes with Asia YouTube channel, but it's that MP3 podcast that you want, and that's hosted by Anonymous Dinosaur at anondino.squarespace.com. It's where Joe's other podcast, Smasherpieces, is hosted, and you can find Smasherpieces and Original Soundchat wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, even on Spotify, where we have a feed of podcast episodes that you can subscribe to and listen to, but we also have a Spotify playlist. And if a song is covered on this show and it's on Spotify, it's getting added to that monster playlist. Joe, what's being added this week?
Both of these soundtracks happen to be on Spotify, so both of them are gonna be added to the playlist. Well, in NSR's case, the Cutting Room Floor tracks will be put onto the playlist because the Critical 5 is actually already there from Best of 2020.
There you go. That's perfect. And then when you're done listening, you can find the show on social media at Soundchat OST. Leave some feedback for us. How are we doing with these episodes? What would you like to hear? And what would you like to have covered with these games that we're taking your suggestions and adding it into our 2022 game list? Joe, who are we talking about next week?
I genuinely don't know how next week is going to go, but I will be talking about Chase Bethia.
I will be talking about Kazuma Jinochi. All right, to play us out, we've talked about Little V Mills before, and we've got to bring him up when it comes to Devil May Cry. He got brought into Devil May Cry 5 because of how good of an electric guitarist he is, especially bringing in that metal edge. So it's only fitting that Little V Mills' cover of Lock and Load be featured here to end this episode from YouTube. All right, that will do it. Thanks so much for listening this week on Original Soundchat. We'll see you next time. Take care.